very warm welcome from our end. We are very different animals. We come from the world of education. I believe all of you have been part of this, and in fact, all of you are still learning every day. And we hope to convince you that we come from the university that you all wanted to go to. It's a university without professors. It's a university of peer learning, which is pretty much what we're doing here right now. And that's why Michael and Sarah and many of the folks that we know from this community all thought, yeah, that's probably a pretty good match. And we are here today. My name is Max Senges. I'm the CEO and headmaster of 42 Wolfsburg in Berlin. And with me is...
And I'm Pratik, CV curriculum lead / tech lead at 42.
And we tried to play it also a little bit as a duet today, so don't be surprised. We know what we're talking about, but we are not very practiced in that particular duet, let's put it this way. So, yeah, today we come to share about the study program that we have set up in the last year and a half, 2 years. It's called Software Engineering in Automotive and Mobility Ecosystems, and I guess at this point you see why there might be a certain synergy between the activities. Basically, we are trying, or we will, I should say as CEO, educate the next generation of software engineers for automotive and mobility. And we've chosen from the very beginning to do that with open educational resources. And that, of course, means that it's a pretty good match for open source in general, but for you it also means everything that we do in this collaboration you can take home and use with your clients for your own teammates to onboard and learn and innovate together. So the first part of the presentation is about that program, and then we talk a bit about where we think this partnership could go. But again, this being a learning environment, we might very well be wrong in at least some aspects, and we certainly forgot some aspects. So we put some questions below because we want you to be active listeners and to think about, what does that mean for me? May I become a fellow? May my organization become a partner in this particular constellation? What ideas do you have? We're going to share about lab space that we are very happy to open to SDV activities. And of course, we're looking for projects to get started, which ones might be good, more suitable than others. And of course, what questions and feedback do you have for us? Hopefully we don't need the full half hour now, but we have also compelled Michael and Sarah to give us an hour tomorrow at that collaboration time. And you're very, very welcome to use that to continue the conversation. So, maybe before I jump directly into the program, a few more words. If I see a couple of question marks, the university without professors, how does that all work? Very briefly, 42 is of course based on the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy's beautiful analogy of asking a computer about the meaning of life, and then you get 42. And so I personally was super attracted to that because it teaches you to ask the right question and then to find out why answers are what they are. That's a pretty good way of deconstructing the world. Maybe 2 words so you can also understand where I come from. I studied business and computer science and then asked too many why questions and ended up with a PhD in philosophy, which in the end got me first 10 years to Google and then into this really exciting venture. But I did not come up with the whole idea of 42 in the university without professors. Indeed, our French colleagues did. About 10 years ago, they started the first 42 school in Paris. That school is now, I believe the latest number is 5,000 students strong, and there's more than 40 42 schools internationally, together around 18,000 students. So, the marketing says it's the biggest software engineering education venture out there. but I guess we're happy to be contested and see if we continue on that successful path. So with that out, a few words about what SEMI is, the acronym we created for software engineering, automotive and mobility ecosystems. It's all open educational resources out in GitHub, and we believe it creates an ecosystem around learning that is basically going pretty much straight from the innovations that you're doing in SDV to spread those to a wider audience and yeah, hopefully generate the talent that we need to keep the engine going. It's hands-on projects, meaning they come from you, they come from the industry, they come from the research in academia, and there is no instructions as such. Basically, our learning method is we ask people to solve problems and then basically give some hints what tools might be the frame for it. So there is no instruction books. It's really problem solving in a specified set. And yeah, in that particular case, we have designed SEMI to not as a complete beginner's course, but for people who have undergone the 42 core curriculum, which takes about a year and a half. And so we don't expect the students to come blank, but to have fairly decent programming experience or experience from industry that would allow them to onboard in a quick manner. To be very precise, and I know this audience loves precision, we have a 42 specialization that we call 42 mobility that is set up for those who have undergone the 42 track so far. And SEMI is actually open to everybody, and we're going to have the first implementation in this July. It's the exciting moment when we're hoping that more and more applications are coming in. So if you know people who this might be appropriate for, I believe in your case, you're more fellow candidates, but if you know people who might be interested in that master level education, please point them our way. Now, last point on this, just to start to get you into the mode of grasping what it is. What you see there are pi racers. So again, we're looking to offer very concrete learning objects rather than have people learn theory. They're actually unpacking something and getting ready to code from day one. Next slide. This is when I pass it over to the deeper voice. I think you are a soloer, maybe?
Yeah, I would take that. So yeah, this is the structure of SEMI, and as Max explained, the concept of 42, and where SEMI follows the same concept. It's peer-to-peer learning. It means we do not have professors or teachers who could conduct theory lectures and educate our students, but what we do instead is give them challenge, give them problems, and with the healthy environment, the learning environment, they are encouraged to solve those problems by their peers and by self-learning. And our key is the learning object itself, as Max explained. We learned that students learn faster if they have something handy to try their solution on. And that's why we start with 1 to 10 scale RC as a prototyping device, and they try to learn different technologies of automotive software engineering and mobility software engineering. So, of course, it's a huge umbrella. There are so many projects, there are so many technologies that a student needs to be aware of. But we are starting with very basic, and what you see here is the structure which spans over 12 months. And we initially, on the phase 1, we are introducing 3 core modules, and as you see, DES is Distributed Embedded Systems, is one of the module in a CME program where the focus is to educate students or participants in learning what ECU is and how the software and everything works in the car, right? So starting from operating systems to in-vehicle communications, all related technologies gets covered into DES. Then the second module is ADS, Autonomous Driving Systems, where we introduce different concepts related to autonomous driving and AI, machine learning, perception, all those topics. And the projects gets introduced into ADS modules. And the third module is mobility ecosystem, where we introduce concepts or ideas which are not quite within the car, but of course which is outside the car, which makes car smart, so to say. So the projects like fleet management system and smart charging infrastructure, smart traffic light infrastructure, and theme project, airport experience. So these are the projects where students are introduced to the outside world of the car, the technologies which are supporting car but from outside. So,
Pratik,
yes.
If I just may explain one aspect. So the three modules together are planned to take about 1 year if you're fast and you do it full time. Now, you probably all know the 10,000 hours before mastery, etc. So we don't expect people to go in there and be full experts in all the areas, which would be just too much, right? But what we do think is it gives you a good overview of the different tool chains of what is important and understand where in those areas your individual interest and drive and passion lies. So, for example, in 3-month autonomous driving, you're not going to go super deep in the machine learning, in the depth in the theory. That's not what it is about. But at least afterwards, you can have a conversation with a colleague that is doing exactly that, right? And there is interaction possible and collaboration and learning. So I think that's important. And while this is the heart of kind of from a pedagogical point of view, where we see the backbone, maybe not the heart, backbone of the education, where it becomes really interesting is in the interaction with fellows from industry and academia, people like you. We already have, Pratik, correct me, around 30 maybe, that have volunteered to do so, and the idea is they want to connect with those young talents. Some of them might be enticed by their HR companies or by the need to find talent for their own teams, right? And so there is a mentoring, a learning together, and pursuing projects and working on projects like your SDV projects, right? Where you're winning those folks to think, to contribute, to be onboarded too. So this is all extracurricular and of course, offering internships, offering jobs is in the end what comes up as the next step.
Yeah, exactly. So we are not promising that we will make pros out of students, but at least our objective is to make them familiar, make them aware of the technology. And this is one of the area where a freshly graduate student and where the current automotive industry is, there is a gap of learning technology. And of course, if we want to create an SDV or the next generation of software-defined vehicle and the overall ecosystem, we need resources who can catch up faster, because the technology is moving so fast and the learning is not so fast. And this is one of the areas where we are trying to bridge the gap. And if I can explain a little bit about the horizontal structure. Of course, we cannot introduce a high-level project to the students who doesn't know the core concept of vehicle. That's why we are trying to make the distributed embedded system at least 2 projects. Let's say one project, a compulsory one, where they understand what the structure looks like, how the distributed computing happens in the car, and how technology is used. And keeping that in mind, they decide where they want to dive into. So of course, it's impossible to do all the projects in 12 months, and we are not expecting students to do that. That's why it's important for them to realize, okay, if you want to master autonomous driving, and there is a huge curiosity among the students to learn how the car drives itself, then they might choose one or two projects in autonomous driving systems. But here, we are trying to specify the path. Okay, you want to learn how a self-driving male car can work, then this is the ideal path to follow. And that's why it's important to introduce the core concept as the base, and then introduce the advanced concept on top of that, leaving them, of course, giving them 100% freedom to choose the underlying technology. Of course, this is the very important factor, that we don't tell students to use specific programming language or specific technologies to solve the problem. It's their job, it's their exercise to do, to come up with the best technology to solve a particular problem. To cover it, the last point, of course, we are OER, and we are trying to make the best use of GitHub. And I truly believe that it's the development is 30% innovation and 70% processes. So it's important to train students to follow the industry standard processes, the agile way of work, and this is where we are trying to put them into agile practices through GitHub. And GitHub has projects and issues; those kind of features, and fully exposed to all those agile way of work, sprint planning, sprint review, and all the factors reviewing, and the fun part of the development. So that's where GitHub comes into play as a learning management system, and this is where we also invite fellows, and it's easy for students to get in touch with fellows on GitHub, because the community is active contributing code on GitHub and on GitHub. So, Max, this is...
Yeah, more than happy to take this one. So the idea is that the learning space around CME, somewhat overlapping, merging with the learning space around SDV, is a community of practice. Right? It brings together those who are discussing the new upcoming questions, or helping each other out, pointing to resources, etc. So we are happy to host, similar to what this is, knowledge sharing sessions, networking between the experts, and of course that also means in the end co-creating these projects that we're talking about. Basically, I guess in a way, Pratik, what we could say is, if you have an SDV project and you think it would be good to start onboarding students, learners onto it, we can work with you to make that happen. And in the end, of course, that cumulates to open innovation, as innovation is in the end joint learning in uncharted territory. And yeah, I mentioned before, mentoring the students is something that we also put into a bit more formal structure. So they would actually come up and agree with you on mentoring goals. It's just quite helpful, as Pratik said, to have that kind of structure in it. The commitment doesn't have to be huge. Of course, we'd love for you to spend more time than that, but pedagogical thought leader that we like is Mitch Resnick from the MIT Media Lab, and he says, probably also true for open source projects, right? Having a really low barrier to entry, low floors, high ceilings. You're welcome to spend more than 8 hours a week with us. You can think about it maybe a little bit like a Google 20% project. If you remember those, the engineers were allowed to spend 20% one day per week on whatever they wanted, and that's how we feel this engagement with 42 could work. Next slide. So these are all companies that you're probably familiar with. Many of them are already active on SDV and Eclipse here as well, and that's actually how we first learned about you. You'd be in very good company. Again, also the engagement from the companies is starts very easy by just contributing through individual fellows, goes to funding some scholarships, so students who can't afford studying with us otherwise can do so. By the way, studying at 42 is completely tuition free, but of course the students, if it's a full-time student engagement, you need to still provide for your living and food, etc. So that's what the scholarships are for. And Volkswagen, for example, was so kind to really give us the whole base funding, 10 million for each school for 5 years. But Microsoft is very generous supporting us. So does do all the other ones. So it really ranges in how the engagement of the organizations is organized.
In terms of fellows, of course, no one is expert in everything, and we are inviting all the talent or all the experts to contribute in the OER. And the names that you see here, of course, those are a few of many. And since we started with 3 modules with very basic support, so these are the people who helped us form the content, the project content, put in place. Okay, this could be a real challenge for students, and by solving this challenge, they can learn about different parts or different technologies in the vehicle. So in embedded system, Torsten, Oliver, and Volker are the key people who helped in putting in place 5 projects of embedded systems, which supposed to teach students in distributed embedded system and distributed computing, including starting from building the operating system, embedded operating system for cars, and to have a successful inter-process communication between processes, different kind of application, instrument cluster, and all those things. The second, in the second module, we have Silvio, Sasha, Kido, and David, who are the key people to form 4 projects of ADS, Autonomous Driving System. Of course, as Max said, it's impossible to teach the students everything about autonomy in 3 months, but we started with 4 projects, which introduces the concept of autonomous driving systems. And these are the 4 important experts who helped me form those 4 projects. And last, mobility ecosystem, which covers as the technology is outside the car. Of course, we have Mario with us, who helped form Airport Experience Project. The idea of mobility ecosystem, as I explained, is not to restrict students or participants to focus just into automotive or just into car, but trying to expose them towards overall mobility, where the mobility is people-oriented, people-centric, and not just car-centric, so to say. So Mario, Fabian, and Yannick brought up very interesting projects in smart charging infrastructure, airport experience, and fleet management system to introduce mass mobility as a service kind of concepts to the students, and other hacking-related topics in that fashion. So a little bit about this slide. Of course, why we are doing it is clear. We want to fill the gap which is there from university graduate or master graduate to what current industry or the future car industry needs. And the biggest benefit for the students is, of course, to catch up the skills and to find jobs, to find the internship. And the most important is to improve the networking. It's really, really the key. When I graduated, for example, I now study about embedded systems in my college days of computer science or engineering. how the in-vehicle communication works. I did not study that. But how I learned it is by working with my peers and my experience. So this is the way student needs to be exposed to the open source community like yourself, and where everyone is contributing into specific technology, and they need to understand that where is the gap where they can contribute into SDV, for example. So it's really important for them to get exposed to the open source and very large community as a student, as a practitioner of open source code. And yeah, further on.
Yeah, as you can tell, repetition doesn't spoil the prayer, but those who have been following us will see that we're repeating kind of the same attractors, hopefully. So I'd suggest we go to the next slide, so that there is a little space left. This is us. We also have Tim with us, our program manager, who you'll be interacting with a lot if you start to work with us, also co-organizing the workshop tomorrow. And there is more good folks that you'll get in touch with. Next slide. And this is the lab that we are dreaming of. We don't have it fully signed off yet, but by the 3rd of July, there will be a lab. If it's that cool, we will see. Will we get there eventually? I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, and as you can see, it's like a miniature, and thanks to our fellow Thorsten to come up with this very nicely looking miniature lab. So the idea is, of course, to have one ecosystem for our students. So far, it's under the roof studies, okay, where students are encouraged to work with real cars, starting from 1 to 10 scale and gradually moving forward with a real size car. And this can happen only in the lab. They cannot study while sitting in their home and doing remote study. If we want to engage them, or if we want to expose them to the community, they have to bring themselves under one roof, work with the other students and the fellows in terms of experts to learn in a fast manner. And I have a very good example from the semi-pilot program that we just finished. I'll talk about it later. So, as you can see, one tiny part on the ground floor where the test track is designed, and I know the concept is not new, where you can test different solution on 1 to 10 scale car, on 1 to 10 scale miniature city, and the roads and bridges, how the different scenarios could look like. Could be a fun way for students to intuitively learn new things. And then potentially there is an R&D facility where we are trying not to limit our students to just for 1 to 10 scale car, but we are trying to improve the learning object. 1 to 5 scale go-kart size car where they can fit various sensors on it and learn different aspects of automotive software engineering. And why not to go to 1 to 2 scale car and the real car, of course. That's a possibility. Tech area with 30 workstations, so we give students all the electronics they need. As Max mentioned, it's free of cost studies for the students. On our side, we provide them with a work machine and with all the biresearch, electronics, sensory system, whatever they need to work on those projects. We provide them in the tech area.
And just to share, in the 42 world, we calculate one machine can be used by 3 students because we're open 24/7. So do the math, right? If they're there all the time. So the 30 workstations would get you to 90 students. Truth is, of course, many folks do a lot of stuff at home and don't spend 8 hours a day in the office with a computer. But I just wanted to point that bit out to give you an idea that it does scale nicely already with the physical setups. But of course, the peer learning approach, I think the beauty of it, because you take out the rare resource of the trainer, it really scales enormously well, and that's what we have been seeing in the network so far.
Yeah, Adding on that outdoor mobility space and social gathering, we would see Eclipse Foundation SDV Group hosting one of their events if we fructify this concept, and of course inventory room to manage all the things. So this is what we imagine our CV lab will look like. Over to you.
So this is really just a tiny view. Sarah and Michael, I think, have both mentioned that LG has joined Eclipse SDV. We were super happy to hear that because we have been approached by Korean colleagues. The Kookmin University is one of the most traditional places there to study automotive, more around mechanics and mechanical engineering, mechatronics, etc. And they were excited to add that software component. So they have been with us a couple of times. We had a test run with their students in Wolfsburg for half a year. And now in July, the first 10 students will come to study CME with us for a year, and we will go there to start spread our open educational resource over there. So if you know educational resources, have friends that are professors, we're more than happy to grow the community also in that direction. Next slide.
Just a point to add, please. Example of the pilot program, an example of a student. We hosted 4 students from Korea, 3 from KMU and one from Pratik Korea. And 3 students who joined us to pilot test the program, they were basically from mechanical engineering and background. So they had very limited knowledge in the coding itself. And the pilot program was designed to span for 6 months. And within 5 months, from very basic coding knowledge, at the end of 5 months, they were able to create embedded Linux image using Yocto. So you can imagine the potential of the curriculum, that it exponentially increases the learning path for our students. So in 5 months, from almost basic coding knowledge to learning about how instrument cluster works, how IPC works, and how the operating system is created, yeah, that's something that we are proud of.
Pratik, we're standing between people and their well-deserved coffee. So we are going to wrap it up briefly. That part was just to explain that thanks to the great Eclipse team, we had announced our partnership. But announcing is easy. Making it work and providing the value to all parties is where we need you. We are here to make it happen. So please approach us. And get in touch. We hope that there was some reason to what we have been sharing, and let's take it from there. Next slide. I don't know if you recognize this animal. The Germans amongst you will. We call it an eierlegende Wollmilchsau, so an animal that gives you milk, eggs, and wool. Of course, that is how we would love to be perceived in this ecosystem, right? We can be many things. We can be what, hopefully we can also be what you want us to be, what this, partnership can be just a repetition. It can start really easy, 1-2 hours per month, meeting with a young talent, developing those relationships, but really it's an entrepreneurial setup where we want to explore opportunities together, and you've seen the fellow activities before. So last slide, I believe, is it's last slide is that we have been starting to look into LEDA and Velocitas as potentially really nice pilot projects, but to be challenged or to be disagreed with, Gabriela. And of course, we do see that Archie and Sommer are potentially good as well, even though not as good. Pratik, you have the last word on that.
So, of course, lots of potential. You are coming up with many projects, new projects, and I totally believe that that's a huge potential where you can introduce the learning factor of the project to make the students be part of your project and help you to contribute into the projects of SDV. That would be the key idea behind this.
So this is it. I hope you like the animal we brought, and that many of you are inspired to get in touch and learn more. I'm sure there's still questions. Some of them we might be able to answer, many we will have to answer together. But we'd love to do so tomorrow, 2 to 3. If you don't find us now during cocktails, during dinner, we'll be around. We're here to stay. Thanks for welcoming us.